Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dirks, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Understanding the Evolving Information Needs of Researchers, which is sponsored by ProQuest. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. Along the right-hand side, you will see a Q&A panel and a chat panel. If you don't, you can click the buttons labeled Chat and Q&A in the upper right corner of the screen to activate the panels. Please use the Q&A panel to submit questions to our speakers. At the end of the presentation, they will take a few minutes to answer your questions, so please do send them in throughout. If you experience any technical issues, please use the chat panel to let me know, and I will troubleshoot the issue with you privately. Today, we're using the hashtag ACRLChoiceWebinars during the event. So if you have another screen handy, shout out to us. We're at choice_reviews on Twitter. And our presenters today are Mark Ayling and Zoe Loveland. Mark is a senior product marketing manager who focuses on subscription databases, including ABI Inform and ProQuest Central. He has worked for ProQuest for 6 years and is based out of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Zoe is an experienced marketing professional who has worked within some of the largest organizations in the publishing and information industry. During her career, she has worked in key marketing and planning roles across the major market segments of trade publishing, B2B, STM, and the academic sector. Her current position involves building and leading ProQuest market development programs across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And in just a moment, we will be all set to get started, and I will pass the controls over to you, Mark. So here we go.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark, and thanks to everyone that's joined us on the line. So today we're going to be talking about researchers. Hopefully the slide will move on.
And Mark, just one moment here. I think we
have a technical issue here.
One thing to clear up. My apologies. Almost. All right. Let's try this one more time. Send it over to you. All right, Mark. Here we go. And if you click the screen, you should be able to control the
I'm still not moving.
There we go.
There we go. Got there in the end. So, as I said, today we're going to be talking about researchers. This is all about the researcher. And by researcher, I mean anyone that carries out research. Whether it's an undergraduate, graduate student, or a professor, they all need access to the right information to help them reach their goals. Often these different researchers, despite being different levels and studying different areas, share common goals and common challenges. And as an information provider, we at ProQuest look to enable these researchers to reach their goals by giving them access to the right information when they need it. And in that way, we share some of the same objectives that you do as librarians. So to be able to do this, we need to understand these objectives and challenges. However, these objectives and challenges are constantly changing. For example, new technology means that the ways in which researchers can access information has changed considerably in recent years. What's on your screen now is a timeline of ProQuest innovations, but it's a good overview of key technological changes that have affected researchers and librarians, from microfilm in the 30s, CD-ROMs in 1980, through to the internet, discovery services, and streaming video. The options researchers have to access information and the format that information takes is changing rapidly. And librarians are acknowledging this. This chart here is taken from the most recent Ithaca US Library Survey report from March this year. They surveyed 722 library deans and directors, and as part of the survey, those deans and directors were asked to say how strongly they agreed with the following statements. As scholarship moves steadily away from its exclusive dependence on text, libraries must shift their own collecting to include material types. So these results are pretty clear. They show that between 2/3 and 3/4 of respondents strongly agreed with that statement. On the right-hand side, the tiny light-colored area there, maybe 3 or 4% only disagreed. So we can see that although it may be difficult, many people within the industry are recognizing that they need to look beyond traditional content types if they want to provide users of their library with the information that they need to succeed. So not acknowledging this comes with its own risks, and here are a few of them. So researchers could buy content themselves, depend less on the library. We all want the library to be able to supply as much of the right information to its users as possible. But the Ithaca survey reports showed that 30% of faculty will actually buy these resources themselves if they can't find them immediately. Also, there can be too much reliance on Google. Google's the most used website in the world. Google Scholar can provide some excellent content, but it doesn't provide the same level of curation that a specialized research database does. So could they be basing their research on unreliable and unvetted information? Information literacy and critical thinking skills could suffer too. According to a report by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, these skills are incredibly important to prospective employers. So 91% of employers in that survey said that critical thinking, clear communication, and the ability to solve complex problems is even more important than a student's undergraduate major. And of course, the risk for us at ProQuest is even clearer. If we can't provide the content that researchers need, libraries are going to look for someone who can do that. So we all want to help researchers succeed. To do that, we need to deliver the resources and information that they need. And to do that, we need to understand what they actually need. And the key to the understanding is to listen to researchers. So how do we do that at ProQuest? We do it in a number of ways. We collect quantitative data from surveys that we send out. We also gather data on user behavior from users using our platform. We can also get qualitative information too. We attend researcher conferences, visit libraries, we have informal conversations or conduct more formal interviews there. We also hold user groups and focus groups. And through these activities, we can build an understanding of the motivations, challenges, and objectives that these researchers have. Often the researchers we speak to are quite different in terms of subject specialism or their level, but we do hear similar challenges again and again. And this can guide our future research as we look to understand these challenges better. So here are some of the common challenges that appear again and again when we're talking to researchers. So researchers need to feel confident that their literature review contains all of the relevant sources. In practice, this can be quite difficult with so many different sources of relevant information and research being published in so many different formats. I spoke to a researcher at a business conference once who told me that whenever she submitted a paper for peer review, she would always worry that one of the people reviewing the paper would have written something that she had not referenced in her literature review. So it can be quite common for researchers to have this nagging anxiety after submitting a paper. So although we appreciate the value of scholarly journals and the peer review process is the best way we have for ensuring the quality of scholarship, it can be a slow process. And this can be a significant drawback for someone working in a fast-moving area of study. Fields such as nanotechnology or genomics have breakthroughs being made often and quickly. And while the peer review process can take 2 or 3 years, researchers in many fields may struggle to find the cutting-edge information that they need. And they need to be part of this cutting-edge conversation, not finding out what was a hot topic 2 or 3 years later. Another thing we hear quite often is due to an increasing emphasis on collaboration and interdisciplinary research. Often funding opportunities depend on working in cross-disciplinary teams. Researchers often know their own field inside out, from the big names to what others in the field are working on, or which conferences they need to go to. And it can be difficult for researchers who are so comfortable in their own field to start working in a completely different field. And often they just don't know where to start. Also, many areas, particularly in the social sciences, require that research has an impact beyond academia. So researchers need to demonstrate the public impact of their work. To do this requires that they keep up to date with changes outside their field, which may directly or indirectly affect it. So these might include changes in public policy or new developments in other fields, but could also be larger national or even international developments in business, politics, or changes in social attitudes. Again, this need to demonstrate a public impact of their work may often be a requirement for the researcher to get funding. So again, it can be crucial. Librarians and researchers who also teach often tell us that information literacy levels of students are not high. And we often hear from researchers who have teaching responsibilities that it can be difficult for them to find enough time for their research. They have certain responsibilities that they must complete, so when time is tight, teaching always comes first and research can take a back seat. So teachers need to find ways to be smart with their time and to effectively engage their students to ensure that they're meeting their learning objectives. So that was some of the common challenges that we hear from researchers when we're out in the field talking to them. And as an information provider, we're always interested in how we can help researchers meet these challenges by giving them access to the information they need. So we ran a survey earlier this year, building on one that we ran over 2013 and 2014. We sought responses from researchers from graduate students up to professor level, and we received 408 completed surveys. So we know that researchers use scholarly journals, but what we're trying to find out is the other types of information they use. So we asked 2 main questions. The first of which, in addition to scholarly journals, which of the following types of information do you use in your research? But then we also asked, for those with teaching responsibilities, if you teach, which of the following types of information do you direct your students to in your teaching? So with that, I think it's time for a quiz. So you're all going to have the chance to use your polling software now. What I'd like to ask you is, you can see the content types on the screen and you'll see it in the poll. I want you to vote for what you think the the 2 most used content types were according to our survey. So we should have that. There we go. So that's question 1. What are the top 2 most used content types according to the survey? So you've got, I think, 11 content types there. So we put this list of content types together based on conversations that we've had with researchers, also data from the ProQuest platform. So we knew that researchers were using these types of content, but what we're trying to do with this survey was get a better understanding of how much they are being used. So hopefully you're all getting on okay with the polling software there and casting your votes. How's everyone doing, Mark? Is it looking like people have cast their votes?
Yep, we're getting quite a few responses, and still quite a few responses coming in. So we'll give it just a second more, and then we'll close it out. All right, so you should just have a few more seconds there to get your responses in, and then we'll share those out with everybody. You've got about 10 more seconds.
Okay, 10 more seconds to vote.
All right. There we go. And so you should be able to see the responses there.
Okay, so let's have a look. So it looks like the top response was print books, then followed by, looks like joint e-books and dissertations and theses. And then hot on the heels are, okay. Oh, so we've answered both the polls at the same time. So, okay. So question 1, what are the top most used content types according to the survey? So it looks like top 2, the most popular votes are print books, followed by e-books. Okay. And then the next 3, I'd say dissertations, newspapers, and market and industry, company reports, I think. Market and industry reports. Okay, so a good spread. So that's, well, I'll let you into a sneak preview and show you the results of our survey. So I'll just grab the ball back. I should be able to move this on. Should I be able to move on to the next slide now, Mark?
Can you try clicking on your screen and then the arrow keys? There we go.
Ah, here we go. So the good news is you've scored very well. Indeed, books and e-books were the most used content types. And I think you had dissertations, newspapers, and did you have working? You were pretty good on the second one. Trade publications were also up there as well. So that's a pretty good guess. So, so you were pretty well on with what the most used content types are. I think the most important thing about this survey here, though, is that researchers are not only using a lot of different types of content, but they're using them a lot. So every content type we asked about was used by more than half of the respondents. And that 69% figure there shows that the average use of each content type was 69%. So on average, every content type in the survey was used by 2/3 of respondents. So this actually backs up our own usage data from our own platform. Just to give you an idea, in 2016, almost half of the usage was from content other than scholarly journals, with very high usage on many of the content types in this chart, including newspapers, dissertations, working papers, and trade publications. Okay, so remember that we also asked a second question. So when we got, after answering question 1, we asked all the respondents to say whether they had teaching responsibilities. And if they did, we asked them, which of the following types of information do you direct your students to in your teaching? So we hadn't asked this in the previous survey, so we were quite interested to see the results of this. So I've overlaid them here. So as you can see, researchers who teach recommend even more different types of content than they use themselves. So in fact, the average has crept up from 69% of use to 77% for recommending. So they're actually recommending more different types of content than they use. And this seems important. If teachers are recommending even more types of information to their students than they're using themselves, the next wave of academic researchers and lecturers will be using an even more varied set of content types. So the need for us all to provide this information is only going to grow in importance. Just a quick note on this survey. We'll be sending an email around, I think either tomorrow or Friday, with a link to the full white paper. But we're always looking to understand our users better, and one area where we really want to explore is student use of these types of content. So how does it compare to higher level researchers? Are they using different content types? How different is it? And does their use of the different content types match up with their lecturer's recommendations? In other words, are they doing as they're told? So you'll receive the white paper tomorrow, but we're going to be looking to update that, and hopefully we'll have an updated version later in the year. So let's take a look at some of the key findings from our survey. So 83% of respondents use print books in their research, making them second only to scholarly journals and the most commonly used resources. In the 2017 survey, e-books climbed in importance and are now just behind print books, with 80% of respondents saying they use them. Books in both print and e are recommended to students even more frequently, 94% of faculty saying they encourage students to use print, and 88% saying they recommend e-books. News content is also critical to teaching, with faculty overwhelmingly recommending newspapers to their students. Newspapers were used by 72% of respondents and recommended even more by 86%. So newspapers were the fourth most used, third most recommended. And again, this is consistent with our own usage data from the ProQuest platform, which isn't really surprising with high usage of some of the biggest newspapers, such as New York Times and Wall Street journals. The figures for news wires are lower, but still used and recommended by over half of the respondents. Faculty are also using and recommending reports. Fact-driven company, market, and industry reports provide data and metrics for research, and that makes them popular among researchers. Company records are used by 61% of respondents and recommended to students by 71% of those that teach. Also, researchers want the latest research. So content that provides a view into what's next is valued not just in research, but also teaching. So there are many types of scholarly content that don't go through the peer review process, providing researchers with insight into emerging trends. Popular content types include dissertations and theses, which is used by 73%, and working papers and conference proceedings. Again, this matches our own usage data to some degree, where dissertations use is very high. Interestingly, faculty are more likely to recommend all of these content types to their students than use them themselves. In fact, this group of content types had some of the biggest difference between what researchers use and what they recommend to students. A particular interest here is blogs. Although researcher use is comparatively low at 61%, they see the value of the content enough to recommend it to their students, so much so that over 2/3 of the researchers who teach do so. And although the figure for blogs is just 61%, that represents a big jump from the survey in 2014, where use was only 37%. Okay, and with that, I think it's time for another poll. So the question this time is around comparing the usage from this survey with that of our 2014 survey. So the question here is, which three content types have seen the biggest increase in usage since our survey in 2014? So that's open for voting now. So again, through these surveys, it's really nice to have data from different segments, groups, or times. So being able to compare data over different time periods allows us to detect possible trends, make predictions, and identify new areas that we're going to look to find out more information on. So I'll give you a little more time to vote on that. How's it looking, Mark? Do you think we've got most of the results?
A few more, yep, quite a few responses.
Great.
Get a few folks, it looks like, wrapping up. And So we'll close out the poll here and give you about 20 more seconds to put in your responses. And then we'll share out the results in about 10 more seconds.
Great.
Mark, while you're waiting for results, do you want to answer a question about a question that we received about the disciplines that we did the research in? And did we break it down by discipline? The question is that some disciplines use different types of resources more than others, so it can be problematic to generalize across disciplines. Just if you want to answer that quickly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So this time with the survey, we weren't as specific with the disciplines as we were before. This started out among business and social sciences researchers, and then we expanded it out to include researchers from other disciplines as well, including science and humanities. This time we didn't segment it as tightly on subject area. So yeah, that's a really good point, and it's certainly something to be aware of about generalizations across disciplines, and that's probably something that we're going to look to explore a bit further on after this. But yeah,
and it's something that I'll talk about in my section as well around how we curate our content, so we'll follow up on that.
Okay, thanks Zoe. Okay, the results are in. Let's see how you did. I think we've got 3 clear winners. Top is ebooks, followed by blogs, followed by videos. And again, let's have a look and see how you did. You had a pretty good record in the first quiz. Let's see how you did in quiz number 2. Building up the tension. And I have to say you were right again. There are many, so it's no surprise really. So you were thinking exactly the same as we thought. Technology is an important factor in which content types are used more now than they were 3 years ago. So probably the most significant decline was that in print books, which has dropped from 95% to 83% of researchers citing their use. But with use of ebooks climbing from 69 to 80%, it's not too much of a leap to put both of these changes, at least in a big part, down to a transition from P to E. Blogs have moved from being one of the least used content types in the previous survey to just below average in the 2017 survey at 61%. So they can have been seen to have moved more into the mainstream as an information source for research. However, in the 3 years between the 2 ProQuest surveys, I think you got this right, almost. Videos were actually the biggest climber. So in 2014, only 39% of respondents were using video in their research, and we were really surprised at how low that figure was back then. In 2017, it's climbed to 71%, which really confirms the anecdotal evidence we've all seen and heard, and we would have been very surprised if that hadn't been the case. Okay, so it's clear that researchers are using a lot of different content types, and they're using them a lot. And with researchers who also teach, recommending an even more diverse set of information to their students, it looks like use is only going to increase in the future. But what are they using all these different types of information for? And how do these different types of content help researchers meet some of those challenges that we talked about earlier? So newspapers were very high on the list and also have high usage on our platform. It's certainly one of the most read types of content on our list in general and outside of academia, but what academic value have they got? Well, researchers need to make sure they stay in touch with what's going on beyond their field of study. Having a good understanding of what's happening more broadly not only makes it easier for them to identify research topics, it can also help them stay up to date with what their peers are doing, are they appearing in the media, and what are they talking about. Also, the more relevant and topical their research, the more likely they are to be asked to talk in the media, which can be a great incentive for their profile and their career. So returning back to our researcher from the first section, by staying up to date with global trends, they can keep their research topical and more easily demonstrate its wider impact. So it's also too important to access the latest research in dissertations, working papers, conferences and blogs. But not only are they providing cutting-edge research, they also provide a huge volume of scholarly academic research. Much of it will have been through some kind of academic evaluation and review as well, such as in the case of dissertations. Access can help our researcher who is anxious about missing something in the literature review by providing a far more comprehensive set of information to search at that stage. It can also be often the only place that specialized or really new research has appeared, is in these content types and not in the journals. And returning back to one of our researcher challenges from earlier, these content types can contain the most cutting edge of research, and often the same research then appears in the scholarly journals a few years down the line. And here's a good example of this. So on the left is an article published in the American Journal of Public Health, a peer-reviewed journal with an impact factor of 4.1. And on the right you can see the same journal with minor edits including the title appearing as a working paper in 2014. So the researcher using just journals will read an article that may be crucial to their research a full 2 years after the researcher who has access to working papers. So it was no surprise to anyone that video has increased the most since our last survey. And it's ideal for practical learning where it can be far easier to get an understanding by watching someone actually carry something out than by reading about it. So areas such as medicine, especially point of care, or those studying anthropology or linguistics to get the benefit of actually seeing examples of human behaviors or speech patterns, or those studying musical and theatrical performance would be able to actually see how to perform a piece of music or theatre. Also, thanks to YouTube and social media, videos everywhere. 1 billion unique users of YouTube every month. Half of all internet users use YouTube. So people are now used to watching video as part of their everyday life, whether it's watching TV on their phone, watching a clip on Facebook, or looking up a how-to video on YouTube. And this applies even more to younger people, so students are so used to using video now that they're now expecting it to be a substantial part of their learning. And with students so used to using videos, and it often being a medium that can help to convey an idea or demonstrate a concept better than any other, it can really help our lecturer from the section earlier looking for better and more efficient ways to engage his students. So again, we all want to help researchers succeed. So we've talked about how important it is to listen to researchers so we can keep up to date with their changing needs and goals. And we've shown some of the research we've conducted to help us understand those needs. We've also spoken about some of the problems that these different types of content can solve for researchers. But how does this understanding translate into what we do at ProQuest? How can we work with librarians to help them to help researchers? I'm going to hand over to Zoe Loveland now to talk about just that.
Thanks very much, Mark. So ProQuest mission is to deliver better research, better learning, and better insights to enable people to change their world. We use research findings, such as that shared by Mark today, to assist us in curating the content that researchers need in order to be successful in fulfilling key tasks and meeting their goals. That means including a broad range of content types across all disciplines so that researchers are connected with the materials that enable them to review perspectives and make comparisons both within their own discipline or, as Mark said, if they're working in an interdisciplinary context, working across disciplines. We then simplify access to those materials by enabling search of all the content via a single platform, and there I'm talking about the ProQuest platform. So there are 3 multidisciplinary collections at ProQuest, which, when combined, create a foundation of that in-demand scholarly content types across the key disciplines. They're all accessible via the ProQuest platform, and there's that simplifying access to this diverse set of core research materials. So very briefly, to explain what those products are, ProQuest Central brings together many of our most used databases to create the most comprehensive, diverse and relevant multidisciplinary research database available. It provides access to databases across all major subject areas, and the collection includes thousands of full-text scholarly journals, newspapers, magazines, dissertations, working papers, market reports, all together on that powerful platform. And then in addition, we have workflow tools that support users from experienced to novice to actually be able to integrate their workflow and cite results in citation styles. ProQuest Academic Complete is a collection of scholarly ebooks from leading publishers. It's the first subscription product of its kind, and is an ideal foundational collection for a university ebook collection. With coverage in all academic subject areas, it's an easy solution to provide students at all levels and faculty with a curated ebook collection essential to successful teaching and learning and research outcomes. Academic Video Online is a comprehensive video subscription. It's curated for the educational experience, the depth of content and breadth of content types, and it includes documentaries, interviews, performances, news programs, newsreels, field recordings, commercials, demonstrations, and much more. So it's used for films in the classroom, used for instruction, and contains previously unavailable archival material. So together we can bring these products together to combine the largest amount of highly used non-periodical content types in the categories which researchers have been telling us that they use. The following are just a few key examples of those content types. So 72% of the researchers in Mark's survey said that they use newspapers. So obviously we include 1,700 newspapers from around the world, and including leading names like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Guardian Observer, and the Australian Financial Review. With over 74% of researchers using dissertations, this is really core content for us to be able to provide access to. So we include a growing number of these, currently standing at 115,000 full-text dissertations in all disciplines. And then with 71% of researchers using video now, as we heard from Mark, this rapidly increasing trend, we curate 70,000 videos across a broad range of disciplines, from performing arts to medical to anthropology and to news content. It's not just about delivering value through curating a diverse range of content types in these collections, though. As per the question earlier from one of the participants, usage by disciplines of the various content types is different. So our specialist content and product managers make sure that we have the right coverage of content for those disciplines across ProQuest Central, Academic Complete and Academic Video Online in order to connect researchers with the most used relevant content in their discipline. And I'd just like to illustrate very briefly how that builds up. So as we develop these 3 collections, we're curating the materials that researchers need from their subject's perspective. Academic Video Online is the smallest of our collections, but it has a broad core discipline coverage, as you can see in this chart. It's particularly strong in humanities and social sciences disciplines, where there's significant teaching value in archived films, TV programs, performances, documentaries, and ethnographic content, for example. It also contains training videos and demonstration videos, which are of particular value to learning in other disciplines like medical and counselling, for example. So when we add to that Academic Complete and you add the books collection, you see this growing picture of how the disciplines, the key discipline alignment is growing across these three collections. So adding that 145,000 ebooks builds on and complements Academic Video Online's discipline strengths. Academic Complete is particularly valuable in disciplines which use monographs as a key format of research output. And it's also very strong in coverage of university presses and recommended academic title lists in key disciplines such as the Duties list and the Choice list. Finally, when you add ProQuest Central, the largest of the collections, to this chart, you get the whole picture of discipline coverage across these three collections, including business, health, medical, social sciences, arts and humanities, science and technology. This subject is dispersed across many additional content types accessible via ProQuest Central and includes the scholarly journals, but plus the dissertations, working papers, case studies and newspapers, which support multiple disciplines and research needs, as Mark referred to earlier. We're constantly growing each of these collections from the discipline up. So we, as well as these being multidisciplinary collections, they're being built from the perspective of the individual disciplines within these larger groupings to provide the most in-demand content types in each subject, and then to enable interdisciplinary research to be combined as part of a larger multidisciplinary solution across all discipline types. So as Mark mentioned also, it's essential that researchers can access the right information, not just when, but also where they need it. Content is only really valuable when it's discoverable. This is why ProQuest gives researchers choices to access our content either via our award-winning ProQuest platform or via a wide range of discovery solutions, including Primo, Summon, Google Scholar, and WorldCat. As well as ProQuest Central, we've made content in Academic Complete and Academic Video Online discoverable via the ProQuest platform too. The benefit to researchers then is that they can find search results for books and videos alongside their search results for journals, newspapers, dissertations and so on. And then they can access those collections on eBook Central or Alexander Street's video platform, both of which have been designed specifically and optimized to meet the usability needs of conducting research using books or video. But whichever content type you're searching for, you can start in the ProQuest platform. And then to summarize, at ProQuest, we're continually acting on what we learn from researchers and librarians, both from research we conduct ourselves in-house, such as Mark's work, and also through research that we read about from industry sources. So that we're constantly trying to make sure that we understand the current and future content needs needed to be successful in research goals. We support researchers of all levels by developing our products to provide those diverse content types they use in the key disciplines that they study, and we make that content discoverable wherever their research starts.
Okay, thanks, Zoe. And that all brings us back to the researcher. So at the top of our slide, as Zoe mentioned earlier, is our mission: better research, better learning, better outcomes. And as I mentioned earlier, we share many of the same goals with librarians, and I'm sure that is one, certainly part of what you're trying to achieve in your roles too. So I hope you found our research as interesting as we have. We'll send a copy of the white paper round in the next couple of days. So I'll hand back to Mark now to see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mark. This is Mark Dirks from ACRL and Choice. Let me look through the Q&A here for a moment. I believe we do have a couple of questions in there, and I would also encourage folks to take a moment here to put in some questions if they do have them into the Q&A box. So going back up to the top here, we do have a question about the PowerPoint. I don't know that we will be able to distribute the PowerPoint itself per se, but we will make a recording available to everyone. We also have a question here from Gina, which says, in your survey, what types of information researchers use? Did you break it down by discipline? And I believe we talked about this a little bit. She says, I bet some disciplines use different types of resources, and wonders about the generalizing. We also have a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we spoke about that a little earlier. So yeah, it's a really good point, and it's certainly an area that we're going to look into a little more. So there's various ways you can kind of slice the data, yeah, that's certainly an area where we want to find out a bit more soon.
Great. All right, we've had a question come through here in the chat, actually, that says from Vonda. And Vonda asks, tell us again, if you will, how much video usage went up? And I think that was back on one of your slides toward the beginning of the program, Mark.
I can tell you that. So yeah, video usage was the biggest increase of all the content types. So in 2014, it was actually pretty low, but 39% of respondents said they used it in the 2014 survey, and use in 2017 had climbed to 71%. So not quite doubling, but not far off.
Truly a large increase. And we have a question here that came in through the Q&A from Leslie that says, why were peer-reviewed journals not included? Was that just something you didn't look at, or could you address that?
Yeah, so the idea of this, we know that peer-reviewed journals are crucial to research. So what we were trying to do with this survey was trying to find different content types beyond that. So I think the assumption here is that researchers are using peer-reviewed journals. What we wanted to find out was what other types of content are they using. So we're always looking to provide journals, as I'm sure you are as librarians, but we really wanted to kind of see what are the other types of content they want that maybe people don't think about instinctively when they're thinking about scholarly research information. So that's why it wasn't included in the survey.
Great, very interesting. We have another question here from James that looks like it just came in. He says, first off, the research is fantastic. And James is wondering, is the research published anywhere that folks will be able to access it?
Yes, it is. Research has just been published, and we'll send you a link. Well, I believe, are we contacting everyone tomorrow, Mark? Or is it the day after?
It should be out tomorrow, so we should be able to send it out.
Well, we'll include a link to the white paper in that email, so you'll have full access to that white paper then.
Great. And I'm looking through the questions here. So it looks like we've had a question come in through the chat from Helen. And that says she's looking forward to getting the recording of the PowerPoint, to getting the recording. And actually here, this is from Hector. This is the one I was reading initially. I was wondering if the researcher survey had data on the disciplines of the participants. So did you collect information about whether the participants were social scientists, whether they were working in the humanities and the sciences and that sort of thing?
We did, but it was very broad. So it's not actually included in the white paper. It was quite a general cross-section of researchers by subject, and the criteria, and we didn't probe on their exact field of study very deeply. So the areas that the options we gave them were very broad. So that's not actually included in the white paper.
Okay. All right, we've got a question here from Joan that says, is ProQuest Central the same content everywhere? And I'm not sure if, Joan, you could clarify that for us. I sort of wonder if it's asking if ProQuest Central is sort of has overlapping content with some of the other resources that you were talking about, Zoe. Do you think that you could address that, whether like the ways in which
Mark is
there
the
is
product
overlapping content
on ProQuest Central, so I'm going to ping that one to him.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you repeat it? I can't see it in the chat.
Yeah, let me repeat it here. So the question is simply, is ProQuest Central the same content everywhere? And I'm not sure if that's a geographical everywhere or across the various, yeah, I'm not entirely certain.
No, well, if it's a geographical everywhere, then it is with very few regional restrictions, but very few.
Okay.
And they would be at the level of individual publications rather than at huge content sets or databases.
Okay, and we did get a bit of a clarification from Joan, I believe. Joan says, are there levels within according to what a library will pay? So do you have to purchase all of it, or are there specific subsections of it which a library could acquire?
So ProQuest Central is our largest multidisciplinary collection. So it's a collection of 39 different databases. So there's one version of ProQuest Central, but for customers that want to specialize in different areas or want a smaller collection, there are options, subject-specific options within that. So ProQuest Central covers everything across all disciplines, but there are, for example, there are smaller multidisciplinary products such as Research Library, or they can pick and choose a selection of databases from different subject areas too. But the short answer, there is one ProQuest Central.
Okay, great. We have a question in the Q&A here that I think we could probably address. It comes in from Kay, simply given as Kay. Would you consider including technical reports and patents in the list of content types the next time you survey?
Yeah, we certainly could. So we were very aware when we ran the survey that we didn't want it to be too long. So we didn't want to include too many content types, and we didn't want to include too many questions. But I think because our response was so good, I think we probably could expand it out to include more content types in future, and those are excellent suggestions. So yeah, I think next time we probably will include more content types, including those.
Okay, interesting. We have a question here from Diane that says, what percentage of the ProQuest resources are initially found or discovered through the discovery services that were mentioned on one of the last slides there? Do you have that information?
So I don't have the number to hand, but this is something that we are monitoring. We use Google Analytics, and it is a significant proportion of traffic to the ProQuest platform arrives via discovery service first. And I mean, this really speaks to the ubiquity now of discovery services in libraries as first point of access. So it is a significant proportion of our traffic comes via discovery now. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact percentage.
That makes sense. Thank you. We've got another question here from Juliet. that just came through on the chat, it looks like. And Juliet asks, would you please remind me, okay, I've got to make sense of it for a moment here. Would you please remind me could you identify what types of sources are used most? For example, what are instructors recommending and what are researchers actually using? Do those two things line up? I think is the gist of the question.
Okay, so I think this is about the questions themselves. So there were two main questions in the survey. The first question was asking them from the list of content types which types of content they used in their research. And then the second question split off everyone that had teaching responsibilities as well. And they were asked a further question, which is which of these content types would they recommend to their students? So then we got the view of what they use compared to what content types they were recommending to their students. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay. And we have a question that just came through from Cuddy that says, are there certificates of participation available? And the answer to that is yes. If you simply email me or reply to any of the mailers that have come out, I can get a certificate for you. And we have, I think, a clarification here that came in through the chat from Juliet. Let me send that. And Juliet asks, okay, she simply says, okay, used as researchers, used in teaching, and recommended to students. Thanks. And I don't know if that helps clarify the initial question for you, Mark, at all or not.
Yeah, I think that means we're on the right lines with that answer, I think.
Okay. Great. Well, we have just a few minutes left. I would say if anybody has any additional questions that they'd like to put to either Mark or Zoe, we have just a couple of seconds here, and drop them in the Q&A box or into the chat, and we'll get to them. I would also remind everybody that we do have a post-webinar survey that I would encourage you to take. You should be able to see that coming through the chat box. If you want to give us some feedback, we would appreciate it a great deal.
Looks like there's an extra question from Laura in the Q&A box.
Yeah, I see that there.
And that's a great question. So Laura's asked, have you done research on whether students actually use the recommended resources? So that's I mentioned this in the talk earlier. This is something for the next stage. So we're going to do that research because, like Laura says, that would be really interesting to see whether students are actually using the same content types that their lecturers recommend, and also just to see how different their use of the different content types is compared to kind of higher level researchers. So we've not done that research yet, but we hope to do that this year and update the white paper with those findings.
Great, yeah, that would be very interesting to see how the recommendations compare to the actual usage. That would be fascinating. All right. And I think those are all of the questions that we've gotten in so far. So I think we're pretty close to the end of the hour. I would just say thank you, Mark, and thank you, Zoe, for taking the time to present for us today. It was very interesting to see the results of the survey. So thank you very much for spending some time with us today and for sharing the insights.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks to everyone that joined us on the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And I'll just remind folks that we did record the session today, so be on the lookout for an email from ACRL and Choice that has a link to that, and we'll also link to the white paper. As everybody has said, thank you so much, everyone, for listening in today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope you all have an excellent afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.